Hey everyone. Welcome to Dangerous Werewolf. Are you brave enough to step into the perilous world of werewolves with me? Here wit. We'll uncover the secrets, face the fears, and explore the thrilling and dangerous aspects of these mythical creatures. So hold on tight and let's start this wild adventure together. Chapter 22 Alex. I woke up with a small smile spreading across my face. I looked down and saw Amber still sleeping soundly in my arms. Having shifted so flawlessly and without much pain as Alpha Adam had put it, they wanted me to stay on the property to keep an eye on Xavier and I. My parents visited my sessions with the Alpha regularly, while helping fill in the details of what they'd left over the years, my mom being part wolf, the second biggest one. There were new things I felt and sensed since I had shifted. Scents were stronger. My reaction time was faster and precise. I could hear and make out what people whispered from across the room. I felt lighter on my feet and agile. Not to mention the emotions I felt towards certain things. Things that would irritate me to no end before now only annoyed me a little. I felt more protective over friends and family, and the feelings I had towards Amber, my mate. I didn't tell her, though I had a feeling she already knew. Those feelings of being protective and possessive had increased tenfold. I'd have almost been uneasy towards the whole matter if Xavier hadn't been so active in it all. He wasn't taking over, but he was definitely present a lot more, especially when Amber was teasing us. I chuckled, remembering the previous night. She became such a tease and it was all I could do to not. Well, let's just say Xavier had some punishments in mind. That right now, he was purring very loudly. I found it odd that he made such a noise, due mostly to the fact that he was a wolf. If you're going to be annoying, go back to sleep, he growled softly. I chuckled inwardly. What? Can't a guy voice his opinion? He growled again. I was sleeping so nicely next to our mate. Just had to go and ruin it. I mentally shrugged. Sorry. If it's such a big deal, I'll let you be. Please, he asked quietly. I was a little startled at his voice. I guess I didn't know just how much Jackie. I think Amber's wolf was named meant to him. She means everything, he said softly. I nuzzled her neck with my nose, causing her to snuggle closer to me. This time I didn't complain when Xavier started purring again. I personally felt like I could move mountains by her side. Amber moaned softly, making me smile wider. She was adorable when she slept. It was so peaceful considering how feisty she was when she was awake. Okay. Yeah. We're whipped, I said. Xavier growled, but I could almost hear the laugh behind it. Way to ruin the moment. Again. Well, it's true. Whatever. What are you smiling about? I looked down again and saw Amber looking up at me. I didn't realize that she was awake. Xavier, I put simply. She rolled her eyes, then sat up with a yawn. What time is it? I glanced at the clock on her nightstand. 7:23 in the morning, she asked, her eyes widening. I nodded, and spat out the fuzz that landed in my mouth when she hit me with her pillow. Why'd you wake me up so early? Amber complained. It's Sunday. We don't even have school tomorrow. Or all week. This means that you don't wake me up before 1000. I laughed at her statement. We were lucky that we had spring break. So I take it that you're not a morning person. This earned me another hit with her pillow. What was your first clue? She asked. I smiled, before giving her lips a quick kiss. Hey, I defended. After the tease that you were last night. You had it coming. I reserve the right to be because 1. You're still not forgiven and 2. I am a girl. That last part entitles me to be a tease. I fell back onto the bed with a groan. What she told me last night about having to wait for her forgiveness. Great. So what do you want to do today? Wolf girl, I asked. Anything I want. Wolf boy, she retorted. I chuckled. What's first? She moaned, burying her face in her pillow. My dad. I have to go talk to him about something first. Is that a bad thing? To me it is. Almost the past year, any time I have to talk to him, it is usually about preparing me for being a Luna. It gets old real fast. I nodded a little. Well, how about this? You go and talk to your dad, and I'll make us some breakfast. Sound good? I practically melted at the energetic and surprised smile she gave me. Now we're talking. About time you found some way to please me. She teased. Oh, I could think of another way, I said with an evil smirk as she got up. Her face turned red in record time. I laughed, gave her a kiss on her extremely blushed cheek, and headed downstairs. I retract that brownie point, she called after me. I learn it back later. I shot back, making sure she caught the double meaning. I heard her sigh in frustration and shut the door. I couldn't help but laugh to myself as I went into the kitchen. There, I ran into Christine, Amber's mom, who raised her eyebrow at me. She was leaning against the large kitchen aisle and with a mug in her hand. What? I asked not so innocently. What are you doing to my daughter? She asked, amusement clear in her eyes, possibly making her embarrassed, maybe even tormenting her. I replied with a shrug. Christy and laughed. Are you sure that's a good idea with what she's hanging over your head? I shrugged again. Maybe, but it's worth it if I get to see her cute reaction. I told her, not seeming to care if this was her mom. She didn't say anything that would say that she minded. I guess it was kinda obvious that deaths weren't a big thing around here. Must be a werewolf thing. So what are you doing down here? She asked. I answered her as I started to grab things and make breakfast. Making Amber breakfast. Want any? I offered. I swear that if Christine's smile could get any bigger, it did. Although, she did raise an eyebrow at me. You can cook. I nodded, pulling the eggs out of the fridge. It's something that I picked up from my mom, I guess. I don't know how I learned it, but I ended with another shrug. I could see the approval in Christine's eyes. Then it turned to curiosity. By the way, how have your parents been? Last we talked. Well, you weren't exactly awake. I looked at her, confused. I had forgotten that she hadn't been there with the alpha during the few sessions I'd had with him. It was after the first hunter attack. She elaborated. Oh, right. Yeah, and when I did wake up, I still don't think the rest of my head was awake either. I replied sheepishly, referring to how I treated Amber. She waved her hand in a motion, saying to forget about it. Don't worry. It's past us now. I nodded, starting to make a couple of omelets. They've been good. I was going to swing by there later this week to grab some things I'd forgotten on the way over. Seeing as how I'm staying here, might as well. Christy and nodded. Sounds like a plan. Actually, I was going to have you and Amber move into that suite we have down the hall. I nearly dropped the spatula I was using, whirling around to look at her. I'm sorry. What? I know it's odd for you, but it's actually quite natural for us. When mates meet each other, they usually move in with one another after the first week. I've already talked with Adam about it, and we agreed. Have you asked my parents? She shook her head. No, but I'm sure that they'll understand. They both come from our side of things. I let out a small sigh, cooking the rest of breakfast, and putting everything on a couple of plates. Guess this was my life now. Talking to my werewolf girlfriend's mom about moving in and making breakfast. Alex. I looked back up at Christian. Yes, do you love my daughter? Do you love Amber? She asked slowly as if making sure I understood the question. The question took me by surprise. I'll admit, but it didn't stop the automatic response that slid my mouth. Yes, I love her more than anything and everything, I said without faltering. I didn't have to try to put effort or emotions into my reply, for like everything else, it came naturally and honestly. She means the world to me. Christy and nodded. Well, there you go. Now I'm going to go hunt down my mate and tell him to send yours down. I doubt she'll want to miss a breakfast like that. She finished with a smile. I laughed and nodded. Okay. And on that note, she walked away. I sat down on one of the island stools, waiting for Amber. For once, I'm actually pleased with you, Xavier said. How so? You didn't make a fool of yourself when you confessed your love for our mate, he said with a snicker. I rolled my eyes at him. Shut up. It's not hard when you love someone. Maybe. But might I add, love is an understatement in our case. I smirked. Well, he wasn't wrong. Amber, I tried to get rid of the blush that was on my face as I walked towards my father's office. I was still going to get Alex back for that later. I know I was being a tease last night, but hey, he had it coming. I knocked lightly on the door to my dad's office. It may have been early for me, but he always got up early so he could get stuff done and have time before it got too late in the day. Come in, I heard him say. I opened the door and stepped inside. His office was spacious and had a nice desk behind it, and had a few bookshelves along the walls. A couple of chairs sat in front of the desk, which had become quite messy with various documents. You wanted to see me? I asked. Yes, I was. How do I put this? He said, rubbing his chin in thought. I leaned against the side of his desk, waiting patiently. I was wanting to make sure that you'd be ready to take charge of the pack should anything happen in between now and the next few years. I nodded, a little confused. Yes, I've always been ready. Why, he sighed, rubbing his eyes. I'm going to give it to you straight. This was brought to my attention the other day, and I've been going over it multiple times with a lot of the wolves in this pack. Those that know things. Okay. Because you are an alpha female, things are going to hit you harder than we thought. First, because you are of age, and you've already met your mate. Your heat is going to hit sometime between now and next week. I felt my jaw hit the ground in shock. But oh no, he didn't stop there. Because of the way Alex's wolf is, he continued, and the way things are. Well, this is going to be an interesting mating, to say the least. I shifted, starting to feel awkward. I could tell by the emotion in his voice, mostly lack thereof, that he had simply switched to alpha mode, and not I'm talking about this as a father to my daughter mode, to say the least. Your heat might last longer than it should, and might even be, more intense. Apparently, so says the pack doc. This is so you can hurry up and lead the pack. Oh, okay. How the hell do you reply to that? Sounds great. Dad, I'll be sure to make Alex lock me up in my room for the next 2 weeks while we fuck like rabbits. No worries. Now that the first thing. Your mother and I have agreed that you and your mate are to move into the open suite we have downstairs. Alex, well, I'm going to talk to him later about all of this. I just sat there. Jackie. Yeah, I'm thinking about it too. Although, I would be lying if I said this won't be fun. Jackie. I yelled mentally at her, my face feeling like it was on fire. What? I mean, with a body like that I can only imagine his, Jackie. And oh, those ABS of his, and that sculpted chest. Oh, I cannot wait for this. I could feel her getting even more riled up, so to speak. I just stopped talking to her and shut her out. There was no way in hell I was going to think about that right now, especially not in front of my father. My heat isn't supposed to be for a week, but it seems no one told her that. Amber, if you're finished. I looked up at him. Talking to your wolf, he asked. I groaned. Sorry, this whole thing has Jackie flying off the rails. He smiled. Well, your mother just told me that your breakfast is ready. Does she need any help? I asked, happy to change topics. He shook his head. I'd keep Alex happy if I were you. It's not often you can find a guy his age that is willing to cook for his mate. I laughed, starting out the door. Then I'm even luckier. Alex. It wasn't long before Amber came back downstairs. 5 minutes at the most. She gave me a wide smile as she sat down next to me. So what did you talk to your dad about? Her smile faltered as she turned red. Well. It may or may not have been something that involves you. I raised an eyebrow. Spill it. She sighed. I guess I'd better. Otherwise, it would be mean if I didn't give you a warning. I shifted so that I faced her completely, putting my form down. What is it? My dad said that because of this position you and I are in, that I Amber. I might actually be an eat faster than we thought. I looked at her after a moment. Trying to decipher the weird noise, she just blurted out. Okay. Not what I saw coming, but okay. And it might be long and intense, she said bluntly. I sighed, leaning back slightly. I watched as she picked at her food. Are you okay? I asked. With this? She just looked at me. Wait. Hold on. You're asking me if I'm okay with this. I nodded. Oh, yeah. 'Cause if it's that bad, I'm probably not going to be able to control Xavier. I feel like he's got me on a leash and not the other way around. I'm not somewhat. He growled. And I have a hunch that neither one of us are going to make it out of this without losing something. Her expression was interesting, to say the least. She kept opening and closing her mouth like a fish, not being able to say anything. Finally, it seemed that she was able to say something. Okay, fair enough. I'm only asking because if it is bad, I'm going to be a clinging, very emotional, an extremely horny female to say the least. I laughed. I think you forgot that I'm still a teenage guy, and the fact that I'm a werewolf will probably make it worse. If anything, it's a gift from God. The moon goddess, she said. What? Unlike humans, we believe that it was the moon goddess that created us. Long story. And I'm kinda enjoying your cooking to tell it right now. I smirked. So you like my cooking, huh? Yes, that's what I got out of her too, sentence explanation of what deity she believed in. Yes, it's great, but don't let it go to your head. I just shrugged, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. Whatever you say. Love, are you going to mark me? Amber asked after a moment of silence. I looked at her. I'm sorry. I don't think I follow. She sighed. Ugh, I need to make you some kind of werewolf book for dummies. Marking is what mates do. It shows that they belong to one another as well as increase the bond between the two, huh? Okay, so what do I have to? Bite you. I joked. Basically, she said. Wait, what? I was kidding. Do I actually have to bite you? She nodded. There's usually a spot on the neck. It varies between mates, but I think that your wolf would know. Do you? I asked Xavier. Do you doubt me? I took that as a yes before looking at Amber. Okay then. I guess that's a yes. You don't seem sure. I've never had my girlfriend to say, bite me, and actually mean it. She gave me a small look, something that I barely caught. She's jealous. You've mentioned that you've had other relationships. Xavier said. Oh, okay. Thanks for the heads up. We can't have you screwing up again. Now can we? I ignored that comment and took Amber into my arms, kissing her softly. Hey, you're the only one that matters. You mean more to me than you will ever know. Her eyes started to tear up, but the smile on her lips stopped me from worrying. I rested my forehead against hers. I love you so much, Amber. I don't want you to ever forget that. I love you too. And don't worry, I won't, she replied. I couldn't help the ridiculous grin that spread across my face. What are you smiling about? She asked. You said you loved me, I stated. She just shrugged and rested her head against my chest. I suppose you've earned that much. I laughed, pulling her impossibly close. If I did just this much, I couldn't wait to see what I'd get when I was fully forgiven. Chapter 23. Amber. With the threat of the rogues and hunters looming over us, my dad had made an announcement to the pack that we'd begin regular training for anyone in the pack that could fight. Whether it be self-defense or to be on patrol with other pack warriors, most of the pack had begun the regular sessions. What most wouldn't assume was werewolf packs tended to be heavily armed. We had advanced healing and strength capabilities from being a werewolf, but to keep ourselves and others from harm as well as protect our identities of what we were, we did rely on normal human weaponry. This meant firearms training, and two-hand combat. Blade, wielding swordsmanship included battle first, aid, and yes, archery. Thought I never saw the point in the last one, no pun intended, but I did admittedly enjoy the sports side of it. The point was to be well-rounded in knowledge and muscle memory, so if we were to face an opponent with any type of weapon, we wouldn't be caught off guard. The training normally was given to our pack warriors as they were in combat the most with skirmishes and issues between packs, but having the unique threat looming over our heads gave cause for my dad to be cautious. Alex had finally finished sword training with Jack, so we decided to hang out on my balcony. So, when were you going to tell me that I was going to be alpha? Alex asked softly in my ear. I stiffened. Ah shit, us soon, I said, though it came out more as a question. There were still things here and there that I grew up knowing, so it was harder to figure out what else he didn't know. He chucked and nuzzled my neck, causing me giggle softly and let out a small moan. And I thought you drove me crazy, he said. I swirled around and glared at him. Last time I checked, you still weren't forgiven. He shrugged. I can work on that. I leaned back on his chest and smirked to myself. Hey, good luck. It's going to take some time for me to fully forgive you. So who were those rogues the other day? Alex asked me. I groaned a little. It seems that the rogues and hunters have joined forces for some unknown reason. None of us know why, and we don't have any leads. Not even with my uncle on the case. Your uncle? Well, he's not really my uncle. He's my dad's best friend next to Thomas, but he's a hunter himself. He used to hunt any werewolf, but after he found his mate, he only hunts those that cause trouble. That's good to have. Alex laughed. I'd have to meet him someday. I laughed along with him. I think he might have, but I'm not sure. He's someone that doesn't stand out unless he wants to. Then I like him already, he said more to himself. I looked out into the forest, loving the view. I love you, Alex whispered in my ear. I love you too, I said, facing him with a wink. He was about to say something, but I heard my dad howl. Something's wrong. I grabbed Alex's hand. We have to go, I said as we raced downstairs with him hot on my tail. I dragged Alex up next to my mother and father, who stood on the back porch, looking out amongst the pack. Most of the werewolves were in wolf form and all of the members were there. My dad cleared his throat and everyone went silent. I have urgently called this meeting for the sake of to the pack, regarding the rogues and hunters in the area. He paused and looked around. We have received reports that they appear to be getting ready to attack soon. When they do, I want all those too old and too young to fight inside one of the safe houses with new guards and warriors to fall back and defend as needed. I need all warriors to be on high alert, and until then, no one is allowed to walk to grounds without another fighter. Are we clear? I heard a chorus of yes alphas ring through the open yard. My dad nodded. Dismissed. I stood there not knowing what to think. Are they going to attack soon? And when? I hope those lessons had helped you learn to fight hard. Alex, my dad said, looking at him. Alex nodded. Bathe Alpha and I'll help however I can. My dad gave him an approving smile and walked back with my mom into the pack house. I saw Alex glance at me. Are you all right? I looked around and felt off somehow. I turned to Alex and nodded. Let's get going. I have a feeling that we shouldn't be here. He looked confused but nodded anyway and led the way back to Terrence's house. He was going to stop by and get his vehicle as well as a few video games that I had insisted on him bringing. He had also commented that if he really was going to move in, that he needed more than a week's supply of clothing. Me being me, agreed rather quickly. I couldn't survive 3 days with less than 2 weeks of clothing. As we walked home, I couldn't help but notice Jackie wouldn't stop pacing. I was about to ask her what was wrong, but before I got the chance, a bullet went right by my face. I growled and grabbed Alex's hand and started running as fast as I could. Whoa, what the? He swore a couple of times, not seeming to know immediately what was going on. Hunters, I growled out as another bullet sailed past my head. Shit. Alex swore again. How'd they get on us so fast? I don't know, but we need cover. I gritted out. Alex now running right beside me. Dad, I called through the mind link. Amber. Baby, what's wrong? My dad's worried voice flooded my head. Hunters. Right as I said that, I heard a bunch of howls from my pack members. Where are you? We were heading to Alex's house. We are about 5 miles from it. I heard him growl. Try and find shelter. We are coming to get you too. I heard him shut off the personal thing before he opened up the pack link. Everyone get to safety. We have hunters on our land. Guards go keep the elders and the children safe. The warriors come with me. My dad growled. We have to find shelter. Alex. I yelled and jumped back as another bullet came flying towards me. Where? He asked. We don't even know where the hunters are at. They are somewhere to the left of us. That's where all the bullets are coming from. I whispered to him. So let's turn right. He smiled and grabbed my hand. We came to a halt and darted right. I heard some leaves moving and it was the hunters following us. I almost fell when I felt a bullet skim my leg. Shit, I said as Alex picked me up. He came to a complete stop. I looked to see why he stopped, and I noticed 4 rogues in front of us. A flipping course. I mumbled into his chest. He slowly sent me down. I smirked. Why might you ask? Turn around, I said, smiling. The rogues looked at me confused for a moment before their eyes widened. They all slowly turned around when they saw the warriors from my pack. My dad came up in wolf form and stood tall and proud. He growled loudly and I watched as the rogues flinched, but didn't back down. They all jumped and I watched all the warriors shift. As my dad was fighting a rogue, I saw out of the corner of my eye Hunter load his gun and pointed at my dad. I growled and shifted, ignoring Alex's low growl as I left his side. I jumped, dodging the rogue he was fighting, and shoved my dad out of the way just in time for the bullet to hit me and not him. I let out a howl in pain and fell to the ground. So this is what Alex felt. Goddamn. I turned my head to see the bullet was in my leg. I let out a sigh of relief. If it had hit my side, I would have been toast. Everyone stopped fighting for a moment and just stared at me. I was letting out whimpers and my dad couldn't move from his spot. Both he and his wolf looked heartbroken. That's when my pack withdrew any restraint. I could tell they moved from taking prisoners to showing no mercy in that instant. Some of the warriors went after the hunters, while the rest killed off all the rogues. One hunter that got too close was intercepted by Alex, who hadn't shifted yet. I was confused as to why, but my attention was quickly moved to his safety when the hunter pulled out a pistol. Without even flinching, Alex pushed the barrel of the gun away and grabbed his arm, flipping him over his back, and wrenching the gun from the man's hand. He fired twice at the hunter afterward. I thanked the moon goddess Maid had ordered Thomas to teach him hand-to-hand combat. He ran over to me. Can you move? I tried to shift my weight to get up and win when the pain coursed through me. When he saw that I wasn't going to get up, he stood protectively over me and wouldn't let any come by. It was weird seeing him do so. A human teen standing over a silver wolf that was nearly his size, but the energy that flowed from him was nothing but dominance and protectiveness. I watched him raise the stolen pistol and shoot off once or twice when helping a packmate. but otherwise his focus remained completely on me and our immediate surroundings. Alex growled loudly at a wolf that came close, pistol raised, but stopped once he saw it was my dad. He lowered the gun and took a hesitant step to the side, looking at me with a torn expression. My dad shifted and pulled on a pair of basketball shorts. "Amber," he yelled, running up to me. "Amber." I raised my head and tried getting up. But once I put pressure on my leg, I cried out in pain and it gave out, causing me to fall back down. I went to go try to stand again, but my dad pushed me back to the ground. He chuckled, but I saw a tear slip from his eye. "Don't stand. It might make it worse. I'll just carry you back." "Okay." I nodded and my dad smiled. He carefully picked me up and we began walking. "Walk with you?" I heard Alex ask. Though it wasn't really a question. He was still Alpha Wolf and his mate was injured. My dad looked at him and nodded. Alex smiled gratefully. "Thank you. So hey, Amber, you okay?" I heard as Jack jogged to catch up with us. I nodded, licking Alex's hand as he reached over to stroke my cheek. I was a bit worried about whatever was making him use such a conflicted expression. He breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good. What about you, Alex?" "Physically, I'm okay," he said vaguely. His voice was deeper than usual, making it clear his wolf wasn't happy. "Just worried for Amber." Jack laughed. "Oh, the perks of having a mate." Jack looked at my dad. "Oh, Alpha, I'm supposed to tell you that we have caught a hunter. They are bringing him to a holding cell as we speak." My dad nodded. "Okay. That's good because we can get answers out of him. I'm going to question him tomorrow." Jack nodded. "He's also the one that shot Amber." My dad stiffened and Alex gave a deep growl. "He is so dead." Amber got shot. Keep the comments and votes coming. Love all of my faithful shifters. Asked on Chapter 24 Alex, there was a major downside to having a mate. "Yeah, sure they made you stronger. Completed the other half of you. Made you as happy as can be. But there was that one downfall. The fact that even though the human half of you could still be on track enough to make good decisions, your wolf side is constantly worried about your other half. Always. I don't remember at one point where Xavier didn't have Amber in his thoughts. And that's not all. No, it's almost living hell when they are hurt. Worried. Or anything that is outside of one's comfort zone. Don't get me wrong. I love Amber and would follow her to the end of the earth and then jump off of it with her. It's Xavier that gets to me. Him and his complete worrying over our mate despite the fact that I can clearly see that she is okay. I told you already, Xavier. I'll be fine, she said with a slight wince. One of the pack nurses were cleaning up the wound after they removed the bullet, and I could tell that Xavier wasn't liking that being a major understatement how much our mate winced. It obviously stung, and I was giving her major credit for taking it so well. If it were me, I'd probably be grinding my teeth out and swearing up a storm. Then again, I wasn't exactly there at the moment to compliment her. Nope, nope. I was stuck on the bench called the back of my mind while Xavier had taken over, which was peeving me because he and I both knew part of the situation was his fault even though we didn't know how. On the way back to my parents' house, he became very quiet and I could hardly acknowledge his presence in my mind. Ever since I'd shifted, he was there and present in some way, yet at that moment he seemed pushed back by something. It disoriented him as well as myself. So when the hunters ambushed us, my head was cloudy and it was hard to think straight. Once the fighting had nearly died down, I could feel him again, but by then I didn't need to shift. If I hadn't been training, I would more than likely be dead. Xavier wrapped his arms around Amber's shoulders, holding her close to us. The nurse sent him a quick glare, but she continued to work. You were shot, and were bleeding bad. Did you forget the fact that it was a silver bullet? He said flatly. I had to roll my eyes at. We both knew that one of my abilities from my dad's side allowed me to quell any toxic effects that silver had. This included being able to do so for others. especially the girl we had in our arms. Amber just leaned into me, stroking my arm. I could tell Xavier was calming down, for the force that was keeping me back in my own mind was becoming lesser by the second. You're here. The pack is safe. I'll live. And we have the guy that shot me captured. She said soothingly. It'll be okay. Xavier put our head down into the crook of her neck, muttering something about not being able to get to her in time. Xavier, can I have Alex back now? She asked softly. He leaned his head up a little, looking at her. He joked, don't like having me around. She laughed a little. No, I'm keeping you for Jackie. Xavier playfully growled, nibbling softly on her earlobe. She let out a soft moan, pressing her body into us. Seriously, bro. Can I have control over my body now? I asked. I didn't even get a growl from him as he let me take over again. Guess he's happier now. Good. Cause wolf or not, I'm keeping you, I said. Theft. Says who? She teased. I growled in her ear, gripping her tighter. Says me. And Xavier. And Jackie. 3 against 2. Love. I'll stick with my odds. To your dad included. She laughed again. You have very curious logic. It works, doesn't it? Amber shook her head. Only for you. Alex. Only you. Just like you. She turned her head to look at me. You only work for me. And only me. Nobody else. I smirked. She rolled her eyes. Don't get cocky. Alex, you still have yet to earn my forgiveness. I couldn't help but let out the whimper that Xavier made as I buried my head into her back and sighed. Yeah, I know. I felt Amber rubbing my thigh and I looked up at her. But it's still nice knowing that you'll be there for me. I gave her a soft growl. Amber, I will always be there for you. Until the very end. Don't ever think otherwise. Do you understand me? She nodded, still rubbing my thigh. All right, Amber, the nurse said, standing up to look at her. You're all set. Keep the wrapping on for a few hours and you should be all better. Thanks, Marie, she replied, hopping up and standing on one foot. I quickly got up and put her arm over my shoulders, keeping her steady. I nodded respectfully at the nurse and walked us out of the doctor's station and over to the holding chambers where the pack kept most rogues. The man that we had in silver lace cuffs looked up at me as Amber and I walked into the room. I felt Xavier growl a warning when he looked at Amber, so I nonchalantly pushed her behind me. It was a pretty shifty-looking area that we stood in, and I could tell that they hadn't chosen to change the structure or layout whatsoever in the past 1,000 years or so. Literally, we were in a dungeon. Why were you on our territory? At a mask the man in chains. I was ordered by my alpha. Who is your alpha? The man shook his head. I am sorry. I do not know. We were never to speak his name, so most of us chose not to learn it. Adam growled. I don't think that's such a wise idea. Lying to me. Hell, what kind of alpha would be doing that? Not a real one. That is for sure. What is your name? I asked, looking at him. Everyone seemed to turn to me, but I kept my gaze focused on the rogue in front of me. Something about him didn't seem right. No, that's not right either. He seemed familiar. He is. We haven't seen him in years. Xavier told me. What in the hell are you talking about? I asked him. Tobias. Though, which though? I must say, Alex, I am quite insulted that you do not remember me. He said, smirking a little and mocking offense. You know me. Tobias nodded. Well, I knew your sister more. Everyone but Tobias himself seemed to gasp at that. I haven't seen my sister in years. Not after. I trailed off, finally recognizing the man. Well, I'll be damned. What is the goddess's name are you doing here? He shrugged. I'm still trying to find that out. My head isn't quite clear at the moment. Adam cleared his throat. You two know each other. I nodded. He's my brother-in-law. My parents made it sound like my older sister ran off to get married the moment she turned 16. I was surprised they acted like it was all nothing, but now I get it. Tobias smiled at me. You've grown since then. Alex, it's been 9, almost 10 years.
Tobias,
I said flatly. Fair enough, he said, shrugging. But your sister obviously didn't forget you or your family. What are you talking about? As soon as we caught word that trouble was down this way, we made our way here ASAP. Sadly, we got separated, but that's a different story. Adam growled. A story that I suggest you tell. Tobias looked at me. You want me to talk? You will find your sister. Until I get my mate back. I'm not going to be taking orders. My wolf is pissed off enough as it is. I nodded. Well, then you're just going to have to wait. I haven't seen a single sign of her for almost 10 years. Well, I'm sure when she swings back around that she'll be happy to see you. Although, I've been gone for a few weeks so. Tobias said, giving me a dead look. I simply raised an eyebrow, looking at Amber. Tobias looked over at her leg and winced. Yeah. Sorry about the leg. Would explain myself, but I'm still trying to figure it out. You'll be first to know what was wrong when I can remember. I growled, holding Amber tighter. We found traces of some type of drug in his system. Thomas said, his arms folded. He claims he was drugged into submission. Likely story. I said, picking up Amber in my arms and walking away. We'll be in the pack house. I needed a break and Amber had no choice but to come along with me. Thanks for reading. K.E. Drick. Chapter 25. Amber. May I talk with Alex privately for a moment? Alex and I looked up from our spot on the couch to see my dad standing in the hallway near the living room. He was walking up slowly to us and I could feel his alpha presence was pressing through. Something was wrong. Yeah, I can. I was quickly cut off from getting up when Alex pulled me right back down to his side. My leg was all but healed, yet Xavier clearly wasn't convinced. I started to notice the small differences between him and Alex, even if they were the same person. I'm not letting her out of my sight, Xavier growled. His deepened and rougher voice also gave away just who was more present of the two. I leaned in and kissed his cheek. Xavier, I love you and all, but I'm just going to go help my mom in the kitchen. He growled again, but it was kind of cute, as it was more of an irritated one. Fine. His grip loosened only a little. I whispered in his ear, relax, babe. I won't leave the house without you. I promise. It seemed to have done the trick, for he relaxed his arm and let me get up, then turned his attention to my dad with a grunt. I'd please ask that you'd at least try to show some respect to the alpha of the land you're on. Adam quipped at him, an edge in his tone. Alex does at least that much. Another growl from Xavier. Okay. You too. Play nice, I said, rolling my eyes. I walked out of the room. Both gave childish complaints which made me laugh as I waltzed into the kitchen. What's going on in there? My mom asked. Prepping dinner. I'd assume it was thunder with all that growling in there. Xavier is being a butt, I said, unable to keep the laugh out of my voice. My mom laughed. You know he's just worried about you. I motioned dramatically with both hands to the leg that no longer had a bandage on it. It was mildly bruised by that point. It looks like I ran into a wall instead of a bullet. I don't understand it. She shrugged. Blame it on instincts. You know how the males tend to be. A bit over the top, though. And Xavier is starting to take over Alex more and more. I'm a tad concerned. I still love him, but I didn't think our wolves were supposed to be in such control when we weren't shifted. She frowned, placing the knife she was using down on the counter. That has been a little strange. Your father mentioned something about it as well. I mimicked her facial expression. That's not good. if Dad has noticed it. I trailed off, Jackie starting to pace in my mind. We didn't want something to be wrong. And now you see where Xavier is coming from, huh? You're making the same face he does when he's worried. I blushed. I am not. I'm just wondering what's going on. Is all. She shook her head with amusement and got back to it. Do you need any help? Sure. Can you grab that bowl for me over there? Alex. Sorry about him, I said, clearing my throat after Xavier had pipped down. I don't know what's going on. I figured controlling him would get easier after a while, but after yesterday, he's on edge. I nodded. I don't think it has to do strictly with Amber being injured. How so? Adam leaned against the wall, seemingly collected his thoughts. I know it makes it harder to keep him calm and under control when your mate is hurt. Believe me, I know. I just think there's something else aggravating him. Like, earlier you didn't shift. It wasn't a question. I sat back down on the couch with my elbows on my knees. I looked down, and looked back up at him. I couldn't. He frowned but stayed quiet. Right before we knew what was going on, I became disoriented. Xavier was very distracted, and I couldn't seem to pull his attention back to the present. Once the attack started, it was like he wasn't even there. It was foggy and dizzying as if I were in a dream. I sighed. If you hadn't had Thomas teaching me, things probably would have become much worse. Adam remained quiet for a while, his posture staying the same. I could only guess at what he was thinking of at that moment. Did you feel it even the slightest bit when you were in the holding cells? I shook my head. No, Xavier was definitely there. All right. I'm going to look into a couple of things. If it were a normal rogue attack, I wouldn't think much of it. But there were hunters in the mix as well. They can be very dangerous and sometimes have the means to stop us in ways that we could only fathom. I nodded. Okay. I'll make sure to be careful. Good. And please talk to Xavier about who the alpha is in the room. He's putting my own wolf on edge. It would end nicely for either of you. I gulped. Yeah, I'll try to keep him tamed. I could hear Xavier growl lowly in retaliation. Great. One more thing. I looked back up at him as he turned to me before he left the room. The second suite down the hallway there will be yours and Amber's. I figured I'd let you tell her and your parents the news. I couldn't help but smile upon hearing that. Sounds good. Thanks. He dipped his chin in a single nod and left. I for one laid back into the couch with a big sigh. Things certainly weren't going as smoothly as I had expected. Then again, for weeks ago I had thought that Amber was just an ordinary girl and I was a nutcase with a voice in his head. For weeks ago I had figured I'd never get any news about my sister again. Things have certainly gotten weird. A short but necessary filler I had to pop in. Don't worry, I'll be updating again shortly. Thanks for reading. K.A.E. Direct Chapter 26 Alex. I set the last box down with a sigh. It was only a few hours ago that I had let my parents know about all of this. And I had packed up my stuff. I was officially moved in with Amber. Not that I had any complaints. I was pretty happy with the way that things were currently going despite how abnormal it all was for me. What are you so happy about? I heard Amber ask. I'm moving in with you. For starters. I'm already out of my house. I get to spend every night with my soulmate. And oh yes, Xavier is finally quietly content with all of this. So I don't have to worry about him keeping me up all night. She laughed and shook her head. We'll see about that. I raised an eyebrow. We'll see. I know it'll happen. Now, the only thing I am worried about is you and Heat. How so? I let out a soft sigh. Your dad explained most of the details that you didn't during training. If another male so much as touches you because of this, I'm locking you in here until it's over. She scoffed. Good luck with that. You know I can't control Xavier's actions, I said with a smirk. Amber rolled her eyes. Oh sure, it's only his actions. What can I say? I enjoy some of his methods. I teased. Not even finished moving in and you'll be sleeping on the couch. She winked. You're going to kill me. I swear. I joked, hugging her tightly. I put my nose in the crook of her neck and breathed in softly, basking in her scent. Am I interrupting something? I turned to see Jack and Sierra standing in the doorway, holding hands. You've got to be kidding me, Amber said softly. Jack laughed. Nope. You've guessed right. I laughed as well. Congrats, bro. Now you can stop getting on my case about being whipped or being a love-struck fool. Touch, but I'm still gonna tease you. It's my duty as your best friend. I rolled my eyes, looking at Sierra. Maybe we can have a civil movie night now. Sierra put a hand over her chest in mock offense. I was so being civil. Okay. So maybe not. But at least I wasn't shoved off the couch. Amber snorted. Hey, I had to do what I had to do, regardless if we used to hang. Sierra shrugged. Fair enough. Come on, Jack. You have to show me where it is. I looked at Jack with a raised eyebrow. I'll tell you later, he said, before getting dragged out of the room by Sierra. Good. Now she's got a play toy. Amber growled after they were out of earshot, which took a minute since we all had heightened senses. Watch it. Her play toy is still my best friend. She wrapped her arms around my neck. Well, you better keep her away from what's mine. Yeah, you totally get jealous. I teased. Don't care, she said, kissing me. I have a right to be. Oh, and why is that? I asked, knowing that I'm pushing it a little. I couldn't help it. She was damn hot when she was jealous. Because, she growled, kissing me again. You are mine. Sorry, what was that? Maybe I should go get them, seeing as how I can't seem to. I was cut off by a possessive growl, and Amber jumped at me. Mine. I laughed as I caught her in my arms. She wrapped her legs around my waist, kissing my neck. I held her tight. Don't worry. Love, I'm all yours. I had spent the rest of the afternoon talking to Tobias and getting some information out of him. After that was done, I decided to drop by my place and tell my dad a few things. When I drove up to my place, I quickly parked the car and went inside. I found my dad in our backyard, bowed over to him to fill him in. He had seemed to be working on some working project, but I couldn't tell what he was trying to do. The moment I mentioned Tobias, his face paled and he stopped what he was doing, his page with him. He asked hopefully. I shook my head. He told me they got separated a while back, and it's kind of hard not to believe him with the way he's been acting. And as little I can remember, I'm sure that Arsene hasn't been around. He nodded sadly, looking down at the table. Almost 5 years. I tilted my head at him. It's been almost 11. My dad shook his head. No, she and Tobias dropped by a few years ago. You were in school, and your mother was out. They dropped by long enough to say hello. Paige told me they were passing through and knew that we wanted to see them, but they had to hurry. Something about finding someone. It was so sudden and quick. I can hardly remember. I looked off into the woods. So he had seen them more recently than either myself or my mom. I'm sure she knew, but it still hurt a little that she couldn't have stopped to say hi to me. It sounded a bit silly and selfish, yet the slight sting lingered a bit. I remembered us being really close despite the 9-year gap between us. She would be 26 if I was remembering her birthday right. So how are things at the pack? How are you and Amber? He asked suddenly. I shook my thoughts away and helped him pull another wood board onto the table saw he had set up. It's been good. I'm still trying to get Amber to forgive me, but I know I deserve that much. Training has been good, and I'm pretty sure Adam is impressed with whatever skills I have, but is too stubborn to admit it being alpha and all. And unfortunately, everyone is a bit on edge with this Rogan Hunter threat looming around. He nodded. measuring and marking pieces of the board. Can't say I blame them. Things are getting rather odd around here recently, and it seems to be happening right alongside with that threat. He seemed to pause. Is dinner still okay tonight? I don't want us imposing if things are too shaky. I blinked. Dinner. Adam and his mate invited us to dinner. I knew that Amber was going to be there, but apparently, she didn't fill you in on it just yet. I chuckled. I guess not. I guess I'll go shower and change and then head back over there. He nodded, patting me on the back. All right. I'll see you over there. Your mother should be home shortly. I nodded and went to get ready. Thank you all so much for joining me on this dangerous werewolf journey. I hope you had your hearts thumping and your minds racing. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and come back for more exciting and dangerous tales. Until next time, stay safe and keep that adventurous spirit alive.